The year is OT 3970. Mankind has left the oxygen riches of Sol, aka Earth, and expanded beyond the stars in search for a rare material tenebrium, a resource essential for faster-than-light travel throughout the known regions of space. Now, a resource war has pulled nations and factions into a war beyond all reason. Beyond All Reason is a game that began before it began, being inspired by a classic in 1997 called Total Annihilation, under the leadership of Ron Gilbert and developer Chris Taylor. Launching a community of inspired games, including a fan project by a man called Beherith, a small project from 2010 until being abandoned in 2013, until its revival in 2019, that quickly expanded as a fan project to a small team of hobbyist developers, then into a force of talented staff from around the world. And while this game is technically still under development since its inception almost 16 years ago, it's gathered over 1.5 million downloads of its alpha and supports multiple esports leagues on an international level. Beyond its success, this is a team of volunteers running an almost completely open source development. So how does this work for the development team working on the title? Well, before we explore the development of Bar, let's first step into our source code time machine and travel back to 1997, a year that saw the death of Princess Diana, Pathfinder's landing on Mars, the first installment of the Harry Potter series being published, but more importantly for this story, the creation of Total Annihilation.
Well, I'll tell you, the story of the Total Annihilation story begins in 94, because there was a game called Dune 2 from Westwood Studios, and it was one of the first RTS games that really had clarity to it. Even though people will point to games before that, it stood on the shoulders of other games. But when I played Dune 2, I was like, this is amazing. What else is this company called Westwood doing? And they had a game called Command and Conquer in the works. And I waited like a kid waiting for Christmas for Command and Conquer to come out. And when it came out, I went, oh, this is good. This is great. But oh my God, do I want to see real physics? It really boiled down to the physics. And the game Command and Conquer was amazing in so many ways. I owe that team and that company so much in terms of what I borrowed, what I was inspired by, etc. But they just didn't get the physics part right. And I had done games in the past, Hardball 2, which used real physics, 40 Sports Boxing. There were other games that we worked on, Test Drive 2. So we were very mathematically inclined, so to speak. And we loved the math. So when I approached Ron Gilbert and I said, you know, this would be really great if we could do something together. He asked me actually what it is I thought we should do when I met him, that this notion that we should create an RTS game that had physics, accurate physics, was the top thing. So that drove almost all of the gameplay decisions as what we like to call emergent. So emergent is different than a game where you are playing based on a set of like rock, paper, scissors rules, or if a tank fires, it's already a known and understood concept that it's going to hit what it's aiming at and take damage. That thing is going to take damage. In Total Annihilation, if a thing fires, you don't know how much damage it's taking until it's actually made contact, which 29 years later is a completely intuitive and obvious thing. Well, of course, why would you do it any other way? But this is a long time ago. This is back when games computers, frankly, didn't have the power to do a lot of this emergent gameplay. So we were sort of on the cutting edge of that whole way of thinking and approaching what we think of today as a simulation. I pulled a computer out of a box in January of 96. I was the only one on the team. And then slowly we built up a team of about 20 people on the development team all throughout the next year. So throughout 96, It was just the first 6 months was me and the lead artist, Clayton Kozleric, and then we shipped the game on September 4th, 97. So it was about a 20-month development period with a whole lot of months where there was just me and Clayton. So really, if you look at Area Under the Curve, we might have had a dozen people working on it for, you know what I mean, in terms of man years. It was not a big manpower push. You know, it wasn't, we're not talking about Halo here. We're talking about a game that literally cost about $1 million to make. Well, back then, you know, the company I worked at with Ron, it was his company, and him and his partner Shelly, they started this kids software company, and they made children's software. And we were making a game that was considered a regular game, or what we playfully called an adult game, meaning this was for adults, not kids. We always snickered when we said that because everybody knew what we meant. But what ultimately one of our challenges was, we weren't surrounded by an ecosystem of regular, you know, games. So there wasn't engineers around every corner that understood pathfinding and efficient rendering engines and AI and all the other things, right? We had very few people around us that knew. So we had to build a lot of this expertise. And we didn't have a lot of money. The original budget was only $300,000. So we started operating based on a $300,000 budget. And one of those things were like the 3D package. So you're gonna model a bunch of units. You're going to create a tank, you're going to create a K-bot, what have you. Well, we did not have the money to go buy 3D Studio Max. So we bought a used version of Lightwave. Literally bought a used copy of a 3D editor. And that single Lightwave package was used to generate, well, not on that, but on the original Total Annihilation, which by the way, I have the box here. I should pull that up because it's kind of fun that I can refer to one of, this is the original box that came out in the shrink wrap. This was one of the very first ones that was handed to me back then. And, you know, like every one of these units, you know, on a used copy of Lightwave, which is kind of awesome now that I think about it, here 29 years later. You know, we weren't spoiled rotten with money to make the game, which you see a lot more of today, and you don't get the results. Money doesn't always generate the results people are looking for.
3D units, multiplayer systems, and emergent gameplay. To run this on a computer in 1997 was asking for a lot. Luckily for the team, Microsoft had an answer, a new program for handling their gameplay requirements.
Yeah, Windows 95 had a brand new thing they released for it called DirectX. And DirectX was this, we're going to solve all your gaming problems. It's going to have all the graphics and sound and multiplayer and everything worked out for you. And the great bulk of the stuff didn't work. It was full of bugs. And it's not okay that it works on one spec machine. It has to work across this nightmare landscape of 1,000 different types of PC computers from all these different vendors and companies. And so we ended up having to do a lot, but we ended up using DirectX, the graphics component, and that actually worked out fairly well. But it wasn't 3D accelerated. It was all CPU, which eliminates most of all of what those packages like DirectX has to offer. We might have used Direct Play at the highest level for the multiplayer, but we learned the hard way back in the day not to be a total jerk, but you don't do anything with something that Microsoft produces in its first version. You wait till version 10, and then you can start to build a business, because it takes about that long for them to get all the kinks worked out of their tech. So it's a little bit of a dig, but it's also reality.
The emergence of early bar wasn't seen until 2010, 13 years after the development and release of Total Annihilation, the game that inspired it. But how did the attempts of this project pan out? And how big was the early development team behind it?
So the first attempts to do something which was called at the time Balance Annihilation Reloaded, which is the same backronym as BAR, as you might have noticed. It was in 2010 when I saw the first models for that. So as I said before, basically the idea was to take the Total Annihilation sort of direct descendants when it comes to the game design and put it into more modern graphics, use not proprietary models, but rather do something that's made from the scratch. Of course, relating a little bit to the old, but also putting some more quality in the visual design, the sound design of those units and the game as a whole.
Roughly when I found out, I think 2007 was maybe the start. I was in college back then, and I needed to pick my own project for it's like a commercial project, a real life project, for 6 months to work on that. And I couldn't think of a better place to start helping on this project. I mean, it was not officially corporate project or something, but it was approved and agreed upon, and I would help with mapping, I would help with designing UI stuff, and well, everything in between. And that was when I got involved, headed over to the forum there, the Spring forum, which I've spent a lot of time in. And yeah, I just basically worked almost full time every day for 6 months on that, making maps and firstly learning it and getting to know everybody and learn from others and get into that. And playtesting your maps as well, so there's also some fun in there. It was not all pure hard work and sweat and tears, but a lot of fun as well. So that was my initial stuff, but I was so enjoying that work and seeing fruits coming from it, if I may say that myself. But I think there was improvements there, and it was that I sticked around until 2010 still to do more mapping and more UI stuff and doing more and more. But anyways, real life happened. That's like the official answer. And I started my own business company in design, graphics, audio, video, a lot of stuff. Then Total Care was kind of like the principle. Okay, because I learned everything during my studies, which was like a multimedia design and technology school. So yeah, I knew everything, but still not deep enough or on the surface. So that's where I jumped in and tried to deliver all that stuff. And yeah, there was little less time for the project in TA Spring project.
I think like most of the work was done between 2012, 2014, where a couple of modelers basically recreated all the units from BA at the time. We have to mention something like all of this has been done just as hobby projects for people. It was just voluntary work. They did it in their spare time. So, how it goes with this sort of projects, like someone just disappears for 5 years and you never heard from them back. And but the work was done. Like a lot of work was done at the time. You still needed music for the game. You still needed a lot of sounds and effects. New maps maybe. And then it was discontinued. It was just basically people lost a little bit of the drive to do those things. Some people had careers.
And that was it for the development of Balanced Annihilation Reloaded. The team disbanded and abandoned the project in 2013. But this was not to be the end of this story. Not yet. In 2019, some of the original members returned to the project with new time on their hands to dedicate to the game, and its shift in the UI attracted a bunch of new players. A revival was taking place, and the team would have to move quickly if they wanted to stand a chance to get this project off the ground for a second time.
In 2016, I think I started getting more interested in actually joining the team. It was the Balance Annihilation team at the time, back with Floris and others. And my main idea at the time was that this game is incredible, and I would like to play it with more people because it was about maybe 50 active players at the time. It was a very, very niche community. The lobby system and all of that was super crude. It was like basically opening like an Excel sheet to play the game. And so whatever, even when I started advertising the game in different social media, Reddit and stuff, it turned out a lot of people just, they install the game and they are completely confused because it doesn't look like a game. It was just like an aggregate lobby system for all of the Spring RTS games at the time. So they would just get into this trouble of finding where Balance Annihilation even is. They had to find a proper host and stuff like that. So it was a struggle. And advertising this game, I had some successes there, and I brought a lot of people into the game, but ultimately it was all kind of Sisyphus sort of work, because those people would then later quit. Like the retention was terrible at the time because we had no sort of first player experience even cared about. And so I joined the team. I did some community work. I did some advertising, and it was all fine at the time. Although after a while we realized that maintaining this project has some sort of limitations, mostly in the sense that this is a very veteran, very old and grumpy community where basically people they like that we are maintaining the game, but they might not like some major changes to it. So any sort of the balance was very iteratively driven, so there was just very little changes there. But we thought at the moment that maybe the way to actually manage that, because there was not much interest in actually driving the game forwards, like the design was a little bit stale. Maybe it's time to actually do something new or refresh something that was done before, and do it with a blank slate, with basically this mindset that improving the game, fixing bugs, and taking it into a little bit different place when it comes to the design is accepted. So with this mindset, we basically dedusted the old bar project from back from 2010, and it was 2019 when we did that. So basically, part of the community followed us, part of the Balance Annihilation community, but the main idea was to create this new ecosystem, this new community around the idea that now we are actually making a new game, or something that still relates to the old stuff, but now we have this mindset that change is fine, and there are a lot of things that we can improve on.
And the long story short is that in 2018, if I'm correct, I was waiting for when is some good sequel happening. I mean, we had Supreme Commander, we had Force Alliance, and we had the Planetary Annihilation. Eventually, 2018, I thought maybe let's check what's the TA Spring project doing lately. So I jumped back in to the forums, to the website, and talked to people. And that's when I learned about the current state and what has happened all the last years. I met Floris, another Dutchie, maintaining, keeping everything running and alive. And that was kind of like the start when I really got involved, because I learned about this is the current state. We have this, we can do this, we maybe want to do this, but there was people that wanted to do different things, but in general the project was not that active anymore, and kind of dying or bleeding to death slowly. I mean, it still had a small team of people actively playing it a lot, but there wasn't really much happening more than pure bare maintenance. And that's when Flores and I and Ivan D and Do and quite a few others were talking and working on it and improving it. And that's when I started, okay, maybe I can help do something here. And we started working on, I know, the strategic icons. That's the first thing that is like, okay, those needed really an improvement, and they could be improved. And that's when Flores and I worked many hours into the night, and we're so aligned on that. And I keep saying that. Flores gets tired of this ever when I say it, probably, but I refer to it as pure synergy. I just read a book about synergy and how that works and that was exactly it. And from there the ball really started rolling, and that's when we decided we need to go, or at least personally, I thought this should be my all-in moment. Like, I think what's already there and what's being built on it's so unique and so awesome, and there's no one else done anything even remotely close to that in the last like 20 years. This probably is it, because I mean I've been waiting like 15 years from then from someone picking it up or doing something similar in that same vein with the same feel vibe, but nothing happened. I mean, Forge Alliance happened, and you have Forge Alliance Forever people trying to push that to the next level, which they are doing an awesome job in. Planetary Annihilation was interesting, but also had its flaws, and some of them were polished away, but some still remain. And yeah, that was like, okay, nobody is doing this. So if this is going to happen, if it's going to be a PtaQ or like anything in this vein, then we probably need to do it ourselves. That was roughly how I viewed it, and that's that's when we jumped on it. Flores as well, and Ivan D, and eventually people were starting to come back as well. PtaQ was also there, by the way. Sorry, I forget to mention just a small player in the team, but no, he was there as well. And yeah, we were joining forces, combining the powers, and that's roughly when the whole rapids and super speed was.
And basically, the major items would be like the infrastructure, would be the first player experience, so that all the people that I advertise the game to, they don't go and get completely confused with how to even play the game, right? So we switched to a new lobby client, which is called Chobby. It's still a little bit old. It's a little bit dated, but at least it looked like a game. So if you would download the game now, you are in the game, which is quite a big deal when you're trying to advertise. And yeah, there was a lot of server work to actually make it scalable as well. And we started to rework the assets. We started to improve on the already a little bit dated models because they were made back in 2010.
It was not long before Beyond All Reason had a sizable crew from all around the world, expanding their departments of multi-skilled operators working on multiple projects to an organized task force, adding and improving to the game's graphics, its engine capabilities, and even adding in custom music tracks.
So we recreated a lot of them. We added better sounds. We added music. A lot of wonderful composers has joined us to contribute their work as well. So we have this amazing OST right now for Bar as well, which gets a lot of praise from the players. And and that's where we are here basically. And we're continuing this sort of effort, going to at some point release it on Steam and have a single player campaign and all the other things that the people expect us to do. Most people get involved by just playing the game and gradually getting more and more involved by interacting with the community, with the developers themselves, and keeping it in the open really helps with that. Other main job in BAR, which is basically game design. I'm the part of the game design team, so I have to have this very deep connection with what the community sentiment is at any time and understand the community. And I think that this is a big thing for BAR, and many people mention that that we do understand our players very well, and that's it's partially because we are players ourselves. Like I play BAR every once in a while. I as I said, I had unreasonable amount of hours spent in BA and BAR collectively. And being a player myself, I know a lot of hurdles that players have. I know how different design decisions or balance decisions may influence the meta. I understand that, and I think it gives me a great basis to actually make those decisions. And it's all sort of democratic. So we have the game design team where there's 5 people, so it makes it easy to vote because you don't have any ties. But we basically discuss things. We discuss the questions about the game. We make the game design document as well, which is a little bit of a peculiar job because we have a lot of design elements which we inherited from earlier titles, and some of the work is creative, so you have to devise some new design elements, but at the same time a lot of the work is just basically archaeology, I like to call it, because you have to kind of figure out it, or maybe forensics. So you have to basically figure out why certain decisions were made in the past, and why this unit works this way. This is very weird. And then you realize that, okay, there were some actual reasons, and the justification for it makes sense. But is this something that we want to continue on? Is this something that maybe we sometimes have to ask ourselves, if we were making the game from the scratch, would you add this pretty weird element to it? Like, I don't know, like transporting allied units is fine, but transporting enemy units, do we want this in the game or not? So there's a lot of questions like that. In Total Annihilation, we actually talked with Chris Taylor, and it was funny because we were pretty sure that a lot of those design elements were, they had some very deep basis behind them. There are very, very deep thoughts, and basically we realized talking with Chris Taylor that well, actually a lot of these things were just random ideas, just things that, okay, this works this way, okay, it will work or not. And Total Annihilation were mostly designed for single player as well. So then there are some elements of this which are funny. Like, for example, there was a way to win the game by basically just making the T1 Air Lab, making a transporter, and then grabbing the enemy com with it. So like the king piece on the board, which is a little bit funny of a way to win the game. And it seems that it's clear that some of the decisions were made with actual reasons in mind, with some sort of traceable reasoning. And at the same time, a lot of those decisions were just basically arbitrary, or there were not decisions at all, just happy coincidences and stuff like that. So you have to pay attention to that. And the work as a game design team member has been very interesting for me for this reason. Had like such an amazing response from the open source community, and so many developers just came to help, and it's incredible because it's something that kind of blows my mind, that if we treated BAR as a sort of like a game studio, you can say that there's like maybe more than 100 people who work on it right now actively. Maybe half of that, but still, there is just so many people, and all this resource when it comes to like talent is being spent on this one game, and the shared goal of making it incredible. And well, that's how it works. And as I say, I still can't believe that this is what's happening, but at the same time, it's such a privilege to be part of it, and it's great.
I think, if I remember correctly, I think I was just looking around and hadn't we discovered this whole this development role, and just posted something. I think in the volunteer missions area of the Discord, and somebody pointed me, I think, to this development role. I picked it up and tried to work out some things, seeing that there are mainly this already established factions with Armada and Cortex. I noticed that there probably won't be too many things that I can help with, especially being new to the project, and there being some expectation standards which I did not know at this point. And then I discovered Legion, basically, and the third faction in development, if anybody's unaware. And I've noticed trying to do stuff for Legion, that it was very, very loosely organized, that there was no clear direction into regarding the art style for the most part, because Zekrus and I think Hornet at that time, two other great guys, especially Zekrus being our balancing head nowadays, had a good plan of where should things go, where should things move mechanically, but on the graphics side it was a little bit all over the place. And I think the first thing that I've tried to do was sending some suggestions, basically how to structure these things, or which parts need to be thought about, as in why should it look a certain way, asking for, is there something like a lore in the background, perhaps, which I could look at just to figure out what would the player expectancy be.
The art team would come to me and they'd be like, hey, what do Cortex buildings look like? And I'm like, they look like the buildings, but drawn from inspiration with the units, right? I didn't have a thing for what Cortex buildings would look like or what Armada buildings would look like, aside from sort of basing their buildings off the units, which doesn't make sense because a lot of those unit models are a decade old or more, or more. So as those questions kind of kept building, what we ended up doing was building out full sort of culture for both factions, right? So Armada has 5 core cultural tenets, and then sort of the rest of their society builds off of those. And Cortex has 5, sorry, just kidding, has 5, and their society builds off of that. And so it's how they speak, their names, the sub-factions within them, all of those things are sort of built off this narrative framework that goes underneath, because not only did we want to have sort of a good foundation for the art team and for the creative teams to build off of, it ends up simplifying a lot of the campaign creation process later on, because we can say, okay, if you put this Armada character and this Cortex character, in this situations, how would they react culturally? How would they react militarily? How would they react verbally? And so it sort of helps us build that framework. Another component of that we felt, or that I felt was super important, was the player doesn't need to know all of that. And it's sort of, I call it like iceberg lore, but I'm sure there's some sort of very cool technical name for it that I don't know. But it's essentially that the player themselves will probably only be exposed to 10% of the lore directly, right? They're not gonna, no player should ever need to read the preamble to the lore that you're gonna deliver them, right? They're just gonna see a small portion of it. but you kind of have to build out the rest of the iceberg, all the part that's underwater, because it needs to be coherent so that the parts that the player does see are all like logically connected. So if they see something and they go, oh, like he said this, or they did that, or this happened, when they piece it all together, it makes sense, right? Like it's a single sort of coherent understanding, narrative, and world. And so there's kind of a joke because like one of the contributors, when we first released lore, he's like, why is there all of this just random information in here? You know? And I was like, well, because it was like, in order to, even though the player's only going to see small fragments of it, we have to make sure that all of those small fragments build something that is unified. And so, yeah, there's like, you know, there's sub-houses or there's sub-factions within Armada, and then there's like sub-factions of those sub-factions, and they all have space. There's a galactic map. There's all these different things. And it is slightly over the top, but also it was just something that I felt needed to get done so that, one, we could sort of process everyone's ideas, but then also we wanted to have this like large framework where other people have enough room to sort of build out their own stories, right? So even after we launch the campaign, there should be a fully fleshed out world that has opportunities. Like if someone else wants to like, hey, I want to do a Veltari campaign in the line worlds that does this. They have all that creative freedom, right? It's like, hey, here's the universe, you guys can go play in it. And so it's like not pure sandbox, but we wanted to give other people the freedom because it's an open source project, right? So like, yeah, we'll have the official campaign, but people should totally have space to like do what they want to do, right? Like do their own things within it. Long story short, I guess I still technically am a bar mentor, which means there's like an academy chat and I'll answer questions in there. And then I also do like replay reviews of, hey, here's what you did, here are ways you can improve because you did this. That happened, blah, blah, blah. And I realized, okay, doing this one by one or even video by video is a poor substitute for just having a tutorial in game. So I collected just a group of other people and basically just did like a proof of concept tutorial that's fully scripted, voice acted, etc. But I had to make up the lore because there wasn't any lore. And I kept badgering PtaQ like, hey, I need lore because I'm trying to make a tutorial, and a tutorial without lore is just an annoying list of commands that the player checks off. Like, I don't know if you've seen Homeworld 3's tutorial, but Homeworld 3's tutorial, the beginning of it is like 10 minutes of rotate your camera left, rotate your camera right, zoom in. And it's like, there's a hilarious video from day 9 where he's like, the game's not bad, but I quit during the tutorial. Because it's just there. And so I was like, PtaQ, please give me lore. But he's super busy. He does a lot. And he really had an idea for what he wanted lore to be. So I eventually just came with him to an ultimatum. And I was like, all right, dude, I need to push this. So either you tell me what lore you want or your idea for lore, and I will write it. Or I'm just going to write my own lore and then publish it. And it was very much an ultimatum. So we ended up having a meeting with, I think, like 5 or 6 people. And he's like, okay, here's here's kind of my vision for the lore. And then we had a ton of back and forth sort of about it. But in the entire lore team, there's myself, PtaQ, Jonathan Crimson, Protar, Smile, and Happiness is probably the other big person. And so what would happen is PtaQ would say, okay, this is what I want to happen in the timeline. And then I would sort of write that, and then we'd all look at it and say, okay, this is good, this is bad. And then we sort of built off of that. In terms of the actual process itself, basically I wrote out the whole timeline, which I think is about 50 pages. And then then I did Armada, and then I did Cortex. And then Scavengers, Legion lore is not finished, and the intention is not to finish it for the time being, because just in terms of release, we want to do Steam release with Cortex and Armada campaigns first, and then we can do like a Legion expansion later. But trying to fit it all in just because we're an open source project is a little bit more intense than we figured we could do. But yeah, I would say the best way to describe the lore process is incredibly iterative and just a lot of editing, because there are a lot of, especially from PtaQ, there were a lot of really cool science fiction ideas that didn't translate well to an RTS medium, if that makes sense. Like, you can tell a story, and I think something that's super critical about storytelling in RTS is having really strong characters, but you only have so much narrative room. And he had a lot of ideas that I think would probably have been better suited for like an RPG. Like, you can explore transhumanism and all these like really cool ideas in something like an RPG, or maybe even like in an FPS, right? But just because with an RTS, you're really limited to like cutscenes and little dialogue quips back and forth, and it's just a lot harder to tell a much more sort of philosophically driven narrative. And so unfortunately for PtaQ, we ended up kind of cutting back a lot of that and just trying to streamline it into something that made sense and that we felt like we could develop strong characters on top of. Because for us, when we talk about RTSs that we grew up with and the campaigns that we really liked, and this is also something, there's actually a campaign channel where I post a bunch of sources for like things I've read or games I've played of like, hey, I like this, is talking about how so many RTS campaigns are really carried by strong characters. StarCraft has that, probably not so much with Kerrigan, but more with like Raynor. Raynor is a great character for it. Warcraft, like the Frozen Throne has Arthas, which is an awesome character where you play as him, and then he has his fall from grace, and then he's kind of the final villain. And so that was something for us where when we were looking at the lore, we were like, how do we want to try to build a world, a universe, and sort of an underlying lore framework that we can have interesting characters and sort of interesting dynamics between everything.
The expansion on the whole lore stuff, which is insanely big. It's massive respect for everybody working on that. It's I know we had it on the plan for a long time, and PtaQ worked on it, and we had many other people already drafting stuff, so which I already thought was cool. But yeah, seeing how much has been created right now, that's just crazy. So that's something I'm trying to be on the sideline and just give some ideas or suggestions or feedback, but that role is more like a slight guidance, and I let the lore guys do their thing, which they, I think, do an amazing job in. And I'm currently only helping with graphical stuff and making it look and be as presentable as possible.
Not having these positions was quite the handicap at first. So since we got these positions and trying to have some more almost corporate structures, basically, it helps. And nowadays I try to get as close as possible together with everybody involved, basically. So I try to draw get good input when it comes to Legion. So I'm slightly biased because the current proposal for Legion's world building and lore is basically the first prototype done by me. But even if I look at the other two already finished actions, the process usually taking as much feedback from different departments or sub-departments, so to speak, and yeah, basically keeping everything those folks have to say in consideration, but also making sure not to go overboard into one direction. When it comes to like going full lore heavy, which could be a bad thing if you like want to play all the lore in units. This doesn't necessarily relate well into like unit readability, good shape design, and whatnot. So I try to keep it as close as possible, but it's always kind of a balancing act, I would say.
Still, and that's maybe a caveat of me, but I still want to be involved in actually creating and working on that. Or I love to guide people and I love to teach. During my studies, I gave many workshops, and I love to share stuff. But sometimes it's also nice, and you have like this idea in your mind, be it a graphical effect, a sound, a design thing, and it's nice to be able to visualize that instead of talking just about it. And that's maybe also an important thing. What I think Bar and the community is great at is people jump in, and usually many of them coming up with ideas, just proposing stuff and showing, not telling. And that's something I think that's I mean, you need to argue and support your ideas or your designs or proposals, but creating is the primary force to then see if something works. Let's test it.
Get with who is the overall creative director, and one of the owners, to like formulate to everybody who wants to work on bars. It is a contributor driven project, like a volunteer project, to offer as much guidance as we can, or I can, and steer people into the direction where we test it out, like if things can work, and that goes for almost all the departments. There are departments where I'm trying not to mingle with too much, especially on the sound side, for example, because I have my taste. B, as I've told people, I have had like 7 sudden hearing losses, so probably my hearing isn't the best to judge these things. But I'm still trying to nudge people into the direction so it still stays consistent, basically, because that is especially with volunteer-driven projects sometimes can become an issue, because of course, which is totally relatable and understandable, everybody wants to work on their thing, on what drives them. They bring all their passion, but also their own opinion and tastes into the project. And I'm trying to not like block people, but to steer this creativity into a certain direction where you can say like, okay, this fits the overall vision that we have for the game.
The audio assets of the game are assembled by their audio lead, Damgam, a collection of free assets from sound libraries reworked for the game, providing an atmospheric environment of rocketry, explosions, and combat. But without music, the game would feel dry. While free tracks exist across the internet, the team were able to find some composers amongst the players who offered their talents to the team.
So they have a Discord channel in the bar Discord that is just titled Music, and anyone who is interested can kind of drop in and say, hey, this is something I'd like to give a go at, and the main developer core team are like happy to give anyone a chance if they're keen to try. So I think my initial my initial demonstration was just kind of a couple of tracks I'd been working on, having been teaching myself the audio software since COVID hit, basically. So I've just been kind of putting some personal projects up on SoundCloud. What has really held down the fort in terms of being able to enable me to do all of those things is I really enjoy listening and learning by ear, and then trying to recreate on the piano by ear, as opposed to sight reading. I'm actually really not that great at sight reading at all when it comes to music. But I can definitely identify a lot of the time what sort of chords and chord structures are and be able to recreate it. And that has been hugely valuable when getting to the composition side, when kind of trying to invoke a particular emotion that I have associated with specific types of chord structures or cadences and things like this. My favorite is one called Surface Fall, which is one of the introductory tracks when you hit the start button in game, and it's got the loading screen and then transitions into the kind of pre-game map setup where you're choosing where everyone spawns on the map. And it's kind of the idea was to invoke the idea of this commander unit that you have at the start, kind of falling down through the clouds of having been kind of traveling for who knows long through the emptiness of space, and then finally reaching their destination and kind of guiding themselves towards the optimal point to kind of land and start their expansion across the land. So I wanted to capture in that a kind of sense of I guess heroism, but also experiencing the beauty of this like strange new world, but it also feeling quite lonely at the same time. All of these kind of quite strange emotions that, I mean, is quite common to see in some of these sci-fi settings as kind of amazing experiences, but also ominous, I suppose. I use almost exclusively software and sample libraries of orchestral instruments. So I work in Ableton, which is actually more commonly used for live music production, but it certainly serves the purpose for this as well. That happened to be the one that I learned from way back when. That must have been over 10 years ago, and then kind of left by the side for a little bit and then picked up again during COVID. So it's kind of become the intuitive way that I make music, at least. And I do use these kind of a lot of synths and stuff that are native to that software. That's kind of become integrated into my style a bit, I suppose. But then also having access to orchestral sample packs that you can download and put into what are called virtual instruments, or VST instruments. I forget what the acronym stands for, but it's basically a way to get much finer control over sets of recorded samples of live instruments, like orchestral instruments in particular, with the violins and cellos and all your horn sections and woodwinds, what have you. So yeah, depending on how much money you want to invest on these different sample packs, you may get more or less access to different playing techniques that real players have played. You can get very expensive things where it's taken loads and loads of time for real musicians to record each of these different techniques individually, and then kind of have them all programmed into this sample pack software that can kind of smoothly change between each one as you like. Because I'm only really starting out, I'm doing this for free at the end of the day. I don't have much money to throw at those really big professional libraries, but I've learned to make do with some of the like either free or relatively cheap libraries. I'm sure there is definitely valid criticism for the quality of the timbre of the sound in certain passages that I've written and contributed in the soundtrack. But yeah, that's kind of all part of the learning process. I've done my best to make it sound as authentically played as possible, even if it's not as authentic as had I hired a real live musician, for example, or maybe gotten one of the really pricey packs. But yeah, that's kind of one of the limitations that you face, but also it's kind of a constraint that encourages creativity as well. I see it as. So yeah, and it's kind of contributed to me making decisions along the way that kind of avoid some of the most obvious types of sound that don't actually sound right, I suppose. Things like when you want to have a really smooth melody, as an example, generally you want to have a function that allows for a style called legato, a playing style called legato, being able to sweep between different notes in a kind of continuous fashion. But when you're programming it on a MIDI sequencer, which is effectively what you do in the software, then it can feel, if you have a clunky or a less expensive sample pack, like you're just jumping from one note in a very kind of stepwise fashion, and it sounds very automated in a sense rather than authentically played. I'm doing this with the string instruments because they're usually the culprit in this case. So I hopefully have managed to avoid some of the most offensive stepwise behavior, I suppose. The game soundtrack in the actual gameplay is determined by, well, it's a kind of parameter that's on in real time as you're playing, called the war meter, or I sometimes call it the warometer, which is I think works quite nicely, but there we go. It's a way to quantify how much conflict is going on the map at any given time. And typically you'll have much less at the start when players are first getting set up and kind of building your first set of buildings for your base and kind of starting to scout out the landscape. So we classify that as the peace soundtrack phase, and that comes with a certain set of emotions. Then we have the next step up, which is the conflict phase, where we start getting more progressive conflict and skirmishes from some of the early level units, and picking up speed in terms of the actual maneuvering of really hefty things around the map to try and outsmart each other. So that invokes a different set of emotions. And then obviously late game we have the full out war category, which is all hell is breaking loose. There's crazy rockets and lasers flying everywhere, and that comes with its own set of emotions as well. To start with the peace tracks, we try to keep a sense of kind of mystery and potentially something I try to evoke is a sense of awe or wonder at the beauty of the map that the wonderful map makers over in the Maps channel have built. That's that's just as part of a really important part of the game, obviously, and the idea of kind of exploration and potentially an ominous sense of what you might find out there on the horizon of this unexplored landscape. So that's definitely one of the moods that I'm trying to evoke when I write a peace track. Then for conflict, we have the more tension building ideas. We don't want it to be particularly bombastic as of yet, because we reserved that for the late, or the the really hefty stuff at the late game, where you've got much more violence happening. But conflict, we definitely still want a sense of building pressure, perhaps kind of moments of respite as well, but also the sense of ominous progression as the kind of the war machine of all of these units starts churning and really kind of ramping up. Finally, at the really extreme end, that's where we have the war category. That's where we have much more bombastic sounds, like really punchy drums perhaps, and much more raspy brass sounds, and perhaps a lot more short sharp strikes of violins and things like this. So much more kind of agitated and dynamic. A lot of it will be quite loud. It'll be kind of on the upper range of what you call the orchestral instruments dynamic range, where they do have a specific kind of quality to their sound. The timbre is you can tell that it is being played hard, I guess, when you're really kind of putting a lot of pressure on a stringed instrument, or blowing really hard through a wind instrument or brass instrument. It definitely takes on a much more kind of aggressive quality to the sound as well. That's a way to kind of evoke the chaos of battle ultimately. Yeah.
Visuals, music, audio, it's elements of game, but it needs something to bring it all together, something with triggers, physics, and hosting. And Beyond All Reason isn't your typical RTS game, with the engine being required to track up to tens of thousands of units, land, ocean, sky, and ballistic.
If you can think of it as though the bar project is split into many independent little projects, and we've got various types of servers, for example, middleware server, a auto host server. We have like the actual game itself and the engine, for example, and they're actually treated as slightly different projects in and of themselves. So you've got the game side, which is the player facing, a very obvious bit that makes and defines Beyond All Reason, and then behind the scenes of that you have the engine, which sort of does a lot of the heavy lifting and the deep mathematics that the Beyond All Reason game depends on. And the engine serves not just Beyond All Reason, but other recoil RTS games as well. Probably the most famous one behind Beyond All Reason be 0K. So my involvement with Beyond All Reason started during the pandemic lockdown, which is probably not entirely surprising since we're all stuck indoors and looking for things to do. And I had come off the back of volunteer work for Ashes of the Singularity Escalation. I was involved with them doing a patch update. It's just as a volunteer tester. They were doing a big balance rework, redesign across the game, and I was helping them with that work. One of the things I did for them was to rework the public-facing AI data, because the AI couldn't cope with the balance changes, so I completely restructured that from the ground up, and really enjoyed that. And I think they were fairly pleased with it, because before the patch, people were complaining that the AI was too easy, the hardest AI needed to be harder, and then after they released the patch with my changes, there wasn't a single complaint about the hardness of the AI. So having done that with Ashes of the Singularity Escalation, I was looking for my next project to dig my teeth into, and I caught the RTS bug, which had started again during the pandemic lockdown, and Ashes of Singularity was just the game that got me back into RTSs. So I was looking around at many games and projects and thinking, what could I really do? I want to make an impact here, like I did with Ashes. It was like it benefited people and people were enjoying it. So I saw as one of the many projects from it was actually from the community of Ashes of the Singularity Escalation. They were looking at other games as well. Bar was one of the games that came up that was really interesting to them because it had a lot of similarities to Ashes in that it was a large scale game, but it was also different at the same time. That was far more responsive, and you were a lot closer to the action. Personally, I was like, your commands were a lot more directly impactful and more micro scale, and they were quite interested in that. And I took a look, and I was really impressed with Beyond All Reason. The website just blew me away. I could not believe that this was just an open source project. The game played really well. The polish was beyond what I was expecting, and just the attention to detail. And I could really feel from the contributors that they were really giving everything to make this project really work. And it felt like something special. And I felt that this game had a huge amount of potential. And I just had to get involved in it. It was just so interesting. So I did. I just jumped onto the Discord server. I played a few games. And interestingly, my original intent for getting involved with Beyond All Reason was to continue my journey in AI development for real-time strategy games. I had plenty of ideas of what I was going to do, how to further the field. And that was, I was talking to them, and the guys were so incredibly friendly and inviting, so much so that you just got sucked in. They guys like, as soon as you're interested, like, come in, come do this. And one of the things with AI development is you want to be able to assess the AI through different stages, early, mid and late game. And so the first thing I actually checked with the engine was how quickly can I get to the end game of a typical match. So with an existing AI, I was running through the simulations and seeing how quickly I could get to a decent end game, because that can be quite a tricky part for assessing AI behavior. It's very complex at that stage of the game, and its decision making will need to be carefully evaluated. So getting to those late stages efficiently and quickly as an AI developer is quite important. And when I pushed the engine to see how fast it could go to get to those late games, I have to say I was a little bit disappointed. I thought, no, we can do better than this. We can do better than this. So I took a look at the engine, and before you know it, I hadn't even realized it. I fired the engine up, I'm firing off tests, and I'm catching diagnostics and identifying areas of the engine that were the bottlenecks, and before you know it, I was knee deep in optimization, and I've never escaped that role, and probably won't escape the engine. I'm now sucked into the black hole of the engine development. Well, for the case of Bar, it's because it was already heavily reliant on the recoil engine. You know, Bar's history goes back well into the Spring days. It started off as a modification of balanced Annihilation to essentially create new assets for the game. It was basically brand new assets, a new set of balance, and eventually it became its own separate, distinct thing. So it was always had that DNA in recoil. But you could think that, widen that question a little bit more and say, well, if you're an RTS developer, or you have an aspiration for RTS developer, could you consider the recoil engine? What does it bring, and what are the trade-offs for considering it? And so the recoil engine, its main advantage is it is built from scratch to be an RTS engine. It is designed with the needs of an RTS game, completely baked in, and only the considerations for an RTS game. So no, fluffy extra and that. And you think, well, why is that? Why is that something worth considering? Given we've got Unity, we've got Unreal, people making a wide range of games on that. Why aren't they considered suitable? And it's because strategy games, or at least real-time strategy games, have I wouldn't want to say completely unique problem, but it is a problem that most other genres of games don't have, and that's the sheer number of interactive elements that are constantly changing. Even a modest RTS game has hundreds of units moving around all at once. Beyond all reason, you can have thousands of units updating every frame. You can have tens of thousands of projectiles. That is an obscene amount of updates. If you consider that games traditionally use what we call a client-server model, the idea is that the server that you connect to runs the game, and your machine as a client sends your commands. So it's like, I shoot my gun, I move to the left, or whatever. It all goes up to the server. The server runs the logic, and then it feeds back to all the clients to say, right, you're now here, your bullet's now here, this rocket's hit here, it's exploded here, and these people have lost this much health because they were in the blast radius and that. So all the things that are changing have to be communicated, and they have to be communicated at a high frequency in order to keep the game running smoothly. But you can only do that with a limited number of entities. So many games, first-person shooters and third-person action games and stuff like that, it isn't too bad for them to handle. And with optimizations, you could probably handle 100 or 200 entities in that respect. But that's not enough for RTS games. There's just too much there. Ashes of Singularity kind of took that route, and it does pay for doing that, because when you get into the late game, you start seeing whole armies teleporting about the map because the updates are taking so long to to get to you, that what your game thinks is where things are is completely off from where they actually are. And so what we need a new network model for that, and that's what Recoil provides built in. But there's another catch on here that is even more important. If so the model that we call it's essentially lockstep, and what that means is that you have your commands, I fire my bullet in that, as in any game, and you send that out. Now it could be sent to a server, or it could be peer-to-peer, where you send it out to all the other clients. But what essentially will happen is you send your commands out, and what you get is everyone else's commands as well. So you get told, right, this is all the commands being processed, go and do it, which means everyone's machine is running the game. It's not just the server now, it's everyone's machine is running this. And as a consequence, we need to make sure everyone's machine processes those commands in exactly the same way, all the way down to the bits and bytes. One tiny fraction of a mistake, and we get what's known as a desync. You might think, oh, well, if my bullet's out by a tiny fraction of a millimeter, surely that's not a problem. Well, actually, in computer games, it is a problem, because that can make the difference between a bullet hitting something and not. And then you get the butterfly effect, where your game starts deviating from everyone else's game, and then before you know it, you're all playing different games from each other, and that's not really the point of multiplayer gaming. So we call that deterministic simulation, and deterministic simulation is, as far as from computing perspective and programming perspective, is actually quite difficult to do. You'd think a computer, pure logic, it would be effortless to make it do the same thing every time, but it actually turns out in practice that there are so many variables that can change. Clocks, random numbers, electrical spikes. You suddenly realize just how chaotic computers really are, and simple things like your environment set up differently on your computer. We had one person that couldn't keep a multiplayer game going with anyone else because they'd set their Linux box up in German and had the German locale, and it caused a fundamental problem that we hadn't seen before. We've since fixed it, thankfully, but it did cause a funny problem where it changed the sorting order, because rather than going A, B, C, D, small case, and then A, B, C, D, uppercase, it went A lowercase, A uppercase, B lowercase, B uppercase, and because it did that, it changed the order. And anything, it just catches you by surprise. So it's definitely a very challenging area of programming. And if you're going for high performance like you are with RTS games, then going into multi-threading, you just multiply the difficulty by 10. Now, in the gaming industry, for good reason, most games will steer clear of deterministic simulation. It's difficult, there's a lot of testing, there's a lot of assurance you've got to do to make sure that all continues to work. Recoil gives you all of that out the box. It's done, you don't need to worry about it for the most part. Unity, Unreal don't give you any of that out of the box. At best, you can buy third-party modules that you can plug in that will do that, but then you're probably buying half a dozen different modules for different purposes of RTS, plugging them in and then trying to get them all to work together. And people can do that. Or you can use Recoil. it's the option. But the reason you don't see games using Recoil, because most games are commercial enterprise, they see the GPL license and they give it a wide berth. So they don't even look at it for that particular reason, and I don't blame them for that. And it is a shame in that respect. So we sort of got the good and the bad, and I think at the end of the day, I think it's proven to be more good than bad overall. And we've got a wonderful contributor community with us, and they know that their contributions to the source code is open and available, and people can collaborate, people can build up on people's work. And we've had, someone maintain something, move on, someone else has come along, kept that going, maintained it, made it even more spectacular. And that is fantastic. It means that there is the potential that projects like this will just keep going and going and going. Unfortunately, the Spring engine itself isn't really being maintained, or at least at the time I last checked. There hasn't been any meaningful contributions to it for years, but the Recoil engine is still going strong, and who knows what's going to happen 10, 15 years into the future, whether Recoil engine eventually gets sunsetted and something else equally amazing emerges from that because the source code's available.
And for some of the fans who weren't game developers or animators or composers, they still wanted to contribute in their own way to help the dev team to continue to make something special they saw the potential in. And so began the need to open up a donation box.
I do maybe that's important, because I did set up the donation system. So that's something that, well, I initially was like, okay, there were many requests of people like, can we help donate? I mean, costs were rising and everybody was still paying that out of their own pockets. So I was like, okay, there are people asking to give money, but it's hard to give that directly to the people that actually are paying for things. We could fix that, or at least try and see if that works. So it was more like an answer to community requests than something that, we need to do donations. So I started it up. I built it, and it went pretty crazy. So all of a sudden we had the funds, and that's when and that's another big role of me, is that we started the whole business thing. So we created like an official entity, legal entity. We created the company, but it's like a needed thing for and that was also actually not the plan, because we had PayPal for our donations, and maybe it was the way we set it up, or I set it up as a business account instead of like a individual free account. But eventually, when too much money came in, they locked it up, because there wasn't any official legal business entity available right then. So that was like an afterthought, or at least like, okay, then we need to do this. So to free up that money, because it was locked, we had to do that. So that's something that I took care of mostly, obviously with PtaQ and Floris as well. Always aligning on things that would why and what systems and how we wanted to do that. So yeah, and that's something I that needs maintenance. So I mean, everything needs to be correctly done and properly as required legally. So all the accounting, bookkeeping, tax stuff. Yeah, that's something that, I mean, I have sufficient experience in the last 15 years with my own company, even though that's just like a local company, and I've done some abroad projects, but it's so international and much more complicated. So yeah, there's a lot of work involved there behind the scenes with accountants and some legal people and the notaries, and well, yeah, and that's, I mean, it's a learning process, but it's we want to do it properly, and obviously be as open as possible about everything that's been donated, or revenue from Twitch ads or YouTube ads. So that's quite some work, and it's not always the most fun work, but I'm in that way happy to do it, because it enables more growth, and it takes off all the costs from all the other contributors who would just separately pay for a lot of stuff, which I think is not that fair. I mean, if we have like people playing it, enjoying it, and are willing to donate something and pay for all those costs as a community, that's a cool thing, and I think that's nice and fair. So yeah, it does involve a little bit of I don't know how you call it in English. It's like monk work, but yeah, checking things and filing the reports and talking with the accountant and making sure everything is correct. And yeah.
Esports is the competitive head-to-head of elite players and is something that you often see with larger titles such as CSGO, League of Legends or even StarCraft, games with established communities that have been around for years. For Beyond All Reason, being a game in the development stages proved no challenge as the community came together and began playing one another competitively, inspiring the start of multiple esport leagues focused around the game.
I think that Bar has a lot of creative freedom and balance freedom because it's open source and there's no profit incentive, right? So I think a lot of times, like, you'll hear these games be like, oh yeah, we want to be an esports title because by entering esports, we're able to there's this influx of capital where you have sponsors, you have teams, you have these viewing events, you have all these things. And something that's awesome about sort of the creative freedom of Bar is, hey, we're making a game that we want to play, right? We don't, we're not looking at customer metrics. We haven't looked at the market. The only reason that I look at other games in the market, like for the campaign, is I'm like, oh, like, how did they do their tutorial? How did they do their campaign? What are the characters' narrative arcs in terms of mission design? What do people like from StarCraft's campaign missions versus Command and Conquer's missions? But all of that is segmented or is kind of focused on this concept of, what is the RTS that I would enjoy playing, right? What would be fun for me and what do I want to try to recreate? Because I think that as consumers of the genre, we all sort of grew into it or enjoyed it because we played really strong titles. We played the original TA, we played StarCraft, we played AoE, we played Warcraft, etc. And so we've seen what we think good RTSs are like, and so we want to take all those pieces and put it in. But I don't think that, at least for me, I don't think that designing a game around being an esport really makes sense, at least, for us, because I think that good esports scenes should sort of organically rise, where people, they want to push the competitive boundaries, they want to push their own skill sets, and that, and then people get invested in the player stories and sort of, the tournament arcs of, oh, he won and then he lost. And I think that trying to plan that is a little insincere, and just having it sort of naturally, organically coincide with the game's development is better. In terms of balance, it does present some issues. So for Bar, we have essentially, 5 official tournaments. So there is BPL, which is Bar Pro League, and Alpha Cup. And those are both 1v1 tournaments that are like, I don't want to say sanctioned, but they're official tournaments. And then for 3v3, we have Faction Wars. And Faction Wars is unique because it's 3 versus 3, but there needs to be one commander from each faction on a team. So there's 1 Armada, 1 Cortex, 1 Legion. So it sort of is one tool that the Balance team has to see, like, hey, how do all these different factions interact in a more competitive environment with coordination, with cooperation, etc. For 4 versus 4, we have Nation Wars. And Nation Wars is exactly what it sounds like. It's players all from one team. Players on one team from one country. So there'll be the German team, the Swedish team, the Canadian team, the US team, etc. And then we've also, along with that, we've allowed like a smaller region team. Like there weren't enough Latin American players or like South American players to have a full Argentinian team or whatever. So there was a team that was like Brazil, Argentina, Peru, I think, or something like that. And then the largest team setting that we have is 5 versus 5, which is a mega series. And that's probably I would say that's the most competitive and most watched series, because there's just a lot more sort of interesting narrative around it of like how to fully co-op builds work. This player was on this team, but then he hopped to this other team. And so I think there's a great mixture of both like strategic depth and then also sort of like player narrative. And I don't really want to say drama, because there's not really that much drama in Bar, but sort of like, oh, he was on this team, but now he's on this team. Okay, so because they played together and that, they're clanmates for a while, they probably know each other's tendencies and, like things like that. So we don't actually have any official tournaments larger than 5v5, in part because once you start getting up to 8v8, balance gets a little weird in a lot of ways, because it's just, there's so many players. So even though we'll run events that are, 150 players or 200 players, there's no acknowledgement or even expectation that like, yes, the 150 player match is going to be balanced. They're just like fun chaos where I have robots, you have robots, let's slam our robots together and see who wins, right?
So even though I'm in the engine development team primarily as a programmer, I was also involved with the tournament scene in Beyond All Reason, the earlier days. I think I was the host and master of ceremonies for tournaments, I think from our second ever tournament all the way through for 2.5 years, until my laptop decided that it wanted to retire from me pushing it to its limits with all the hosting. Because back then, when we were doing the tournaments, the technology that we were using, that the host also had to be the production manager, they had to be the observer. So it was quite, in addition to various other roles. So it was quite taxing, not just on the computers, but also on the host as well, because I couldn't leave my seat for 8 to 10 hours easily. And I had a 2-computer setup. So I had one computer that job was to run Bar, and as we know, Bar is not the kindest to computer technology in terms of when the matches really get going. And I had a separate laptop that handled OBS, handled our backgrounds, the transitions, and collected everything together. Of course, unfortunately, my hosting career came to an end when the laptop decided that it wasn't going to play the 2-part piece for the equation of tournaments on that front. But I got involved doing that originally because I saw the first Alpha Cup, I think it was the Alpha Cup tournament, being hosted by Bar, and I thought that was really, really good fun. I really enjoyed it. The thing I love about Bar games is it's one of those RTS games you can sit back and watch, and you just get that urge, you just got to get in and play yourself. It's so much fun. But it was the tournament, even though it was well run, I felt that the presentation was perhaps not quite up to what I felt was the Beyond All Reason standard. They were just using the tools they had available at the time, so it was just basically sharing a screen, showing Bar most of the time, sitting there in the lobbies and whatnot. So I thought we can level this up. So I offered to host the next tournament. And say by hosting, it's like I'm the one who's on the camera, like now, introducing the matches, what's going on, possibly commentating, although to be honest, I actually was fortunate enough to have help from other knowledgeable players who are far better at the game than myself, who could elucidate our audience on the subtleties of the strategies that are being enacted before us. So that kind of made things a bit easier, rather than me having to just reiterate what I was seeing on the screen and my limited strategic knowledge. We were setting up, so we had so when I did the first tournament, I had the team running around for me in like the a whole week or two before the tournament was due to start. So right, I need a stinger, which is the animation that allows you to change scenes without making it obvious you've just flipped the scene. It's quite abrupt otherwise. And I asked for backgrounds so that we could conduct interviews. We had a lobby area for so I could have a chat with the commentators on a screen, and we got lovely animated backgrounds. We had a bit for the maps. We had a bit for the actual tournament leagues and where the standings were, and that was being updated in the background. Some team members were really, really helpful for keeping that up to date behind. It was all animated and brilliant, and I essentially put my shopping list of all the things I possibly wanted to have what was hopefully to be a professional grade tournament presentation. And I have to say, the Ice Curriculum, the design team really delivered on that, and I just hope that my efforts sort of did that justice in those earlier tournaments.
I think one of the reasons I started streaming, in addition to just wanting to hang out with other people, is that no one was streaming bar, and I was like, oh, it'd be fun to just stream. So I started streaming, and then sort of as a joke, I bike. So like I like to like bike or walk. Like I have a treadmill that goes under my standing desk. And so I started doing that, and then someone was like, you should get a heart rate monitor. So I got a heart rate monitor, and it was kind of like a joke because like they're like, oh my God, you're so intense in the game, because my heart rate would be like 130 or something. But the truth is just like I'm cycling really, really hard. So it's just kind of like a joke, and then I started doing it. I don't know. I enjoy interacting with the community. I think it's fun. So for me, it was super enjoyable. And then that transitioned into casting. So just because people knew me and I had like a webcam set up, there were a few tournaments that started early. Probably the first one that we cast was Omega Series 1, which is a 5v5 tournament. And because I was a known quantity in the community and I, had a casting setup ready, people, Inda is the person, Inda and LSR are the organizers for it. And so they said, hey, would you want to cast this? And I said, sure, absolutely. So we started casting it, and something I realized right away is that we didn't have any assets for it. Like there was nothing there. So I started doing some exploratory work in Figma. Just for me as a viewer, I grew up watching tons of Korean Brood War. And so for me, like having visuals, having it have a little bit more production value is just kind of fun for me. And making that was super enjoyable. It's a little bit of a burden, but it's still fun to do. Like I enjoy making it. It's just kind of finding the time. But I think that a lot of the graphics and the visuals add to the cast and just kind of make it more enjoyable for the audience. And since I essentially am an audience member, it's just fun to do. So Figma is a lot of things. The part of Figma we use, I think, is probably best described as to a layperson as like an incredibly powerful PowerPoint presentation that multiple people can use and access, and that has components that you can update. So for example, you'll have like a player box, and then I'll have all the players and their stats and stuff, and so you can just dynamically update that player box so that on the stream itself you can see, here's Blowdeer, he's last season's champion, here's his win rate with Armada, here's his win rate with Cortex, what's his win rate based on game duration, what's his favorite map, etc. All of those. So it's essentially just a way for us to visually convey information, especially because something that I always enjoyed watching Brood War was the sort of like the storylines and the player storylines. There's a super famous player called Nada, who I used to be a fan of, who when I was younger, who's just an awesome player, really cool guy. But I loved sort of the rivalries and everything that developed. And so one of the reasons why I wanted to use more Figma was to sort of anchor those conversations and sort of that narrative in, previous results and just stats and things like that. And I think it's a little difficult to do, but it's really fun. And I also think that is far more engaging for the audience when you can sort of tell a story through the tournament about, oh, what's going on here? Oh, we haven't seen a lot of, like in the most recent BPL, we haven't seen a lot of Armada, so it's pretty fun and engaging for the audience when like someone does pick Armada and is performing well on it, or if someone picks Armada and they lose, we're like, ooh, they made the rookie pick Armada mistake. I just enjoy watching bar, and I enjoy watching high level bar, so casting it is fun for me. But then I also wanted to sort of create tools and the ability for other casters to like use everything I have. So if you're a caster, there's a Figma, which is just our event archive, which is everything I've ever done. So if anyone wants to use it, they can just go and take whichever tournament they want to sort of model their tournament off of, copy it, change it, do whatever with it. Just to kind of promote bar esports, because I think that it's fun. I mean, it's just fun for me to watch, and it's interesting, and I also think it's a great way to sort of promote bar organically.
I'm one of the older players, and I've got a long history in games closely related to bar. So there's a game called Total Annihilation that came out in 1997, which I started playing in the early 2000s. And I've just played many kind of related games to that, and bar is kind of like a distant cousin or descendant of Total Annihilation. So just through the years, I've played different similarly related games. So this has kind of been a natural progression. It's a genre I really like, and the Total Annihilation style is one that I really enjoy as well. But due to the similarity of bar to other games I've played, there wasn't a lot of new stuff for me to learn. So I was able to kind of hit the ground running. I started playing bar quite early in its days as well, so the skill level wasn't super high at that point. So when tournaments came along, I was on a kind of similar playing field to the other people who'd had experience in the game, so I was able to compete from the early days. And I've just always loved competing, whether I win or not. It doesn't really matter too much. I just love that feeling of playing in tournaments and playing games that really matter. So it's just something I've always tried to be involved in if I get the opportunity. I'll play in any that I can, that I'm available to, really. I'm a bit older than some of the players, so I've got a job and a child and lots of other responsibilities outside of the game, so I'm not always available, but whenever I can play. 1v1 tournaments are my favourite, but I really enjoy team games as well. It's a different aspect, it scratches a slightly different itch, and yeah, just basically any tournament I can play, I'll play. The last, I think, 3 BPLs, which is the 1v1 tournament series, I've come second in all 3. So I've become a bit of a meme with getting second place. Plus my clan in team tournaments has come second quite a lot as well. So been the bridesmaid a lot, not much the bride.
I mean, I started I wasn't good at first when I started playing bar. So I probably played bar for 1.5 years at least before I first signed up for a tournament, and yeah, I signed up to the tournament until I felt like I had an actual chance to compete. I won multiple 1v1 tournaments and also team tournaments. It felt like everything just kinda aligned in a way, because I've been previously watching these tournaments that they've been playing, looking up to these guys that won the tournaments and now I'm here, I'm the one winning the Alpha Cup, which was just an insane feeling when I did. I was just so happy when that happened. It really felt like I just accomplished the biggest goal you could in bar. I mean, I would say I really love this game. Ever since I started playing, I've just been kind of hooked on it, playing it, and I also started becoming pretty good at it after playing for a year or something, and I actually felt like I had a chance to compete and actually compete for the high placements. So that's kind of my main reason I wanted to participate, because I actually felt like I could place high in the tournaments. So yeah.
A powerful esports league all run by volunteers on free programs across 4 leagues on an international scale. However, this isn't the only esport leagues that Beyond All Reason is famous for, with community milestones birthing the creation of mega exhibition matches that are so extreme in their capabilities, not even Chris Taylor could stay focused when near one.
Although it's pretty intense. I mean, you turn away for 1 second and there's action. You miss it. You know, look at this. It's been raging here the whole time we've been talking. It's just raging. It's insane. It's just glowing. Shit is blowing up constantly. Who doesn't love that? You know, I'm going to come right out and say it. To love it and to watch this 150 replay, this replay of 150 people, I loved watching this. I forwarded this on to people all over the place because I say you have to see this. This is amazing. This is the only time I can remember wanting to watch a replay of a strategy game. Like just sit and spectate it like I was watching a football game after the game had already been played, to watch this game. It is an absolute mind boggler. I can't even believe it exists. It's like I'm in a dream.
When we get like some round number on Discord, like the first intuition for the whole community right now is let's do an event, you know, let's do this celebration of the community growing so much. So we've done this for 50k, for 60k players, 60k Discord members. And what we do basically is we do special lobbies, which needs some sort of a maintenance from developers and actively like looking into things not breaking apart. But we run some games which are completely unseen in maybe all of RTS and maybe almost all of gaming as well, when you have like 100 players versus 100 players on one map. And it's, you know, it's a unique experience. It's something that no one has done before, which is super exciting for me to organize. And you know, it's pretty hard to do, but you know, when you pull it off, it's great.
So, if you know me from Winter Gaming TV, you probably found me, just statistically, from those massive battles, the 100+ players. In my opinion, those are the most ridiculous. They're a spectacle, and to play in them actually kind of sucks because the game almost barely runs. Because just the behind the scenes it's glamorous in front, but in the back end, in so many ways, is a bit of a mess. Can still be a lot of fun, but don't expect to have a competitive environment, obviously. But when it came to commentating or casting it, I want to shout out to the Beyond All Reason Discord. They organize all these matches. The replay system is amazing. Just like in StarCraft 2, almost all the videos I commentate are from replay. One, the game runs better that way because it's on my PC as opposed to trying to find a happy compromise between literally over 100 people. And two, it has the most powerful... I don't even get close to... It's a constant struggle that I had to learn. Because StarCraft 2 is the same. That's another example of something that RTS... the competitive/performance requirements of a camera that you can change. The zoom, the angle, like you do so much stuff with it. Whereas in StarCraft 2, it's like, here's your spot. And then if you're like, you get to be this close to your units. And then if they eventually, it took like 8 years. They allowed commentators, only commentators, not players, to zoom to here. Whereas Bar, the whole map. Like, the whole map, at all times if you'd like. I don't know how you'd play like that, but you can if you'd like. You play it in first person on one of your grunts. Again, I don't know how, but you could if you wanted.
Like memorable experience for me would be, because people would like to make fun of me in this way, that, you know, this sort of feeling when you were in like a middle school and there was a bunch of girls in the disco party at the end of the year or something like that, and then would just push you into the middle and you do the fool of yourself, right? And so I had the same feeling with Bar basically when they said there was this meme which was called "Put PtaQ in the middle," which basically meant that we had like 180 players spread into 3 teams, and then they put myself and I in the middle of the map, and trying to work it out and survive somehow. There's a big Winter StarCraft video about it in the internet, so it was very fun to do, and of course I abused some of my dev privileges and using cheats and stuff like that to work my way out of there. But no, it was incredible experience to organize those games and see all these people doing something, like giving this opportunity to so many people to do something that has never been done before. And a very unique experience, like playing with 100 people.
Beyond All Reason has come a long way since its creation in 2010, becoming its own game with its own soul, built on the shoulders of a giant which built on the shoulders of giants before it, but like Total Annihilation, finding its unique voice in a crowded library of the familiar. It now possesses the bragging rights of having over 1.5 million downloads and over 70,000 Discord users as of April 2026, numbers which continue to grow each day.
I think the effort, the fact the project itself hasn't fallen apart in what I believe is over 5 years of very active development by something of a committee with thousands upon thousands of people, both enthusiastically supporting / criticizing things. And I'll tell you, as a streamer I don't have to listen to anyone. I probably should if I want them to watch, but as a streamer, as a content creator, but when Bar itself, the fact that they've been able to put together, and by they, I mean, it's kind of a Theseus's ship situation. Well, not exactly, but they've been able to keep this project going forward productively for 5+ years on a volunteer basis, I think is also, aside from the fact it's an amazing RTS, quite an achievement. I certainly hope that people enjoy it, and I hope it continues to find more success in the future. And I'm obviously I'm invested in that idea, as it's kind of become, it's not Winter Bar TV. I still play other games, mostly other RTS games, but I don't just keep coming back to Bar because it gets the views. I keep coming back because I want it to get the views. As other games are fun for a while, but there's only a couple I come back to again and again. So,
Bar, huh? Just it existing is a miracle in itself. I grew up on TA and Subcom. I'm not a strategy game guy, but just how it's taken inspiration from those games and build something from the ground up for free, by the way. I can't wait to break all my mates in with the new tutorial that's going to come out. There's going to be the campaigns, and with the Steam release after that, there's going to be the Legion campaign. And this game it's my favorite game. It's my hyperfixation. I love it. I've beaten the scenarios on Brutal. We have a small community of like PvP and PvE, and sometimes we meet together for like events, and I'm just so happy about it. I can't stop gushing about this game. Like, I cannot wait to see where we go next.
Hey, I'm Angry Strawberry, and I have been playing Bar for over 3 years now. I sometimes stream, I cast tournaments, and I absolutely love the game. I first played Total Annihilation with my dad when I was very young. So I have been craving a game like Bar for so long, and when I finally found it, I was absolutely obsessed with it. I love the variety, the unit compositions. They are so nostalgic, but they are also very unique. The reclaim mechanic, I love it. There is nothing that makes me happier than thug walking a high OS opponent. It's so fun. I also love the community. It's great. The community has been what keeps me going back. We have had several meetups with people from all over the world, and we became good friends. It's great. I love it.
Bar has just sort of captured me in a way that no other RTS has really managed so far. A big part of that is just the fact that like the sci-fi aesthetic with the robots and the chunkiness of the robots, the funky designs of Legion. I love Legion, and like launching a cannonball all across the map at your enemy, that it just tickles something in my brain. I can't really explain it. It's just really fun. It's also been a bit of like a light in the dark of the tunnel for me as a hobbyist game developer, of community efforts like this, of open source development like this truly can work. The people really care about this game. They're fixing the game, and you see that the people who are working on the game are the people playing the game, because they're approaching it from a perspective of, what do I think I could add to this? What do I think I could improve? What could I fix? And that's just amazing.
Hello, my name is Sivan12. I am a Beyond All Reasons streamer. I believe the reason I've been able to play this game for more than 2,000 hours and still not be bored is because the lobbies are super customizable. There's always new maps, player-made AIs, different game modes, there's casual tournaments and competitive tournaments. There's truly something for a player at every skill level, which I really enjoy.
Beyond All Reason is a game still in development, and still with a long journey ahead of it, with Steam the ultimate milestone for the team. Their story is not over. In fact, it is just the beginning. A story of a team of passionate and talented volunteers reaching for the stars. A story that sometime in the future we hope to return to cover their development, their achievements, and with some luck, their road to Steam.